Good evening, Purple family. Welcome to another episode of Shades of Purple, a Prince podcast. On tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about Prince's philanthropy. But before we get into that, I just want to say last week I didn't do an episode because I was actually busy doing episodes on my other podcast that I just started. I know, I'm just obsessed now, called Book Goddess. And so it's in reference to the work that I do as a librarian. Last week was Banned Book Week. So we had students, faculty, and staff at the two-year college that I work at come up and read excerpts from banned books and talk about the importance of reading these books. And so I did that at the location that I work at and at another branch of the same college that I work for. So it was really great. If you get a chance, please listen to it. It's on Spotify as Book Goddess. But going back on to our main man, Prince, I'm doing this episode because I actually had a request from a lady named Shannon Prince, who is on our Facebook page. So this is for you, Shannon. So I wanted to take the time out and really look into Prince's philanthropy. She actually had a couple of questions about a hospital that he wanted built and a school. So unfortunately, I didn't find out anything about the school or the hospital that he was trying to have built around the late 90s. I'm not sure exactly what happened to that. But however, his second wife, Manuela, did have two schools built in his honor in Malawi in Africa. So that occurred, of course, after he passed. But those were the only schools that I were able to find that he was able to have. They're not named after him, but they were, made in his name. So, but moving on. So now in the late 90s, around the time that he was right before he did the Jam of the Year, or maybe around that same time period where he was doing New Power Soul and, that whole era, he started doing a series of concerts for his charity called Love for One Another that he started with his first wife, Maite. And I actually put the link up of the website for Love for One Another on the Facebook page. So go check it out. Maite is still the director over it, as well as Prince's sister Tyka, Kirk Johnson, and another lady that I don't know who she is, but they all still run it together. And they also do a lot of charity work in and around Minneapolis and in other states, as far as Texas. Also places in Chicago and New York, places like that. I mean, I went on the website. You guys really need to check it out. They donate to all types of charities. And Prince's second wife, Manuela Testolina, she also has her own charity program or organization that she started that Prince actually encouraged her to do, called In a Perfect World. And she also builds schools and stuff around the world, particularly in Africa. But she does all kind of charity work, and it's just wonderful. So I also I didn't put up the link to In a Perfect World, but I think I might tomorrow. So check out Manuela's stuff as well. So I mean, it was just wonderful to see that Prince really inspired her. Actually, that's how they met. Is Manuela was working for Prince for the Love for One Another charity. And I think at some point she became his personal assistant. But that's how they met, and that's how they kind of bonded, she said, was through their work with philanthropy. And she referred to Prince as a fierce philanthropist after his passing. And I must say that I have to agree with her after all the stuff that I have found. And there's still a lot of unknown stuff that we'll never know, because Prince was very, private. He wanted to donate. He wanted to he didn't want to make a show of it, some other people might do. He wasn't about all that. And people wanted to say it was because he was a Jehovah's Witness, but he was actually doing this way before he was a Jehovah's Witness, and he wanted to keep it quiet. One of the first charitable acts he did was actually doing the Purple Rain tour. He gave a free concert at a college for deaf and blind students. So during the midst of the highest point in his career, he decided to do a concert for people that wouldn't be able to, maybe listen to the music the same way, or wouldn't have access, to his music. So he went out of his way to do this. So I'm going to read from the Washington Post, who put this out on the day that it happened, back on November 30th of 1984. So I'm just going to read, some excerpts from it, from the article. In a surprise free performance at Gallaudet College, Prince, the rock star, dazzled and thrilled about 2,500 handicapped students from the campus and the city's public schools yesterday afternoon. They were blind students who could not see him. They were deaf students who could only feel the vibrations of the songs that had made Prince one of the country's most popular performers. But none of that seemed to matter. As Prince performed, often smiling and grinning as he played, hundreds of students raised their hands with thumbs, index, and baby fingers extended, and the two middle ones curved inward to sign to him, "I love you." For Prince, the controversial performer, whose risque Purple Rain tour had sold out a record 7 concerts at the Capitol Centre, the show was a bit toned down, apparently, for the young special audience. Of course, he's not going to come out there and sing Darling Nikki to these kids. So, promoters said Prince requested to do the show for handicapped students who would not otherwise be able to see or hear him perform. It was his second charitable appearance this week. On Tuesday night, he was a featured guest at a reception held to raise money for Maverick Chicago educator Marva Collins and Big Brothers of America, which has more than 1,000 black males in D.C. waiting to be matched with role models, spokesman said. So he started collaborating with Marva Collins very early. And for those who don't know, Marva Collins, who has since also passed away, but she had a school in Chicago for underserved youth. And I didn't really know until I read this article that he had started collaborating with her this early, because Marva Collins is actually featured in the video for The Most Beautiful Girl in the World. She was the older black lady who kind of sat down, and those were her kids that she cared for at her institution. And so, like I said, I didn't know that Prince first probably started collaborating with her and giving money to Marva Collins' school at this early date, but apparently he did. So, and he kept donating to Marva Collins' school in Chicago as well. So moving on, let's see. Okay, so they talked about, him having they described it as an Edwardian suit, crushed velvet, that he wore. Later, he threw his white glove and some of his jewelry into the crowd. Members of his backup band, The Revolution, tossed flowers and masks to the excited students, of whom did not learn of the concert until yesterday morning, shortly before they boarded for the trip to the quiet campus. So they didn't even know about the concert until right before, they got a chance to go. And so I'm going to read some of the quotes from some of the students that were there. I had a lot of fun. I felt his music. Angela Maxey, 18, a deaf student at Gallaudet, said through an interpreter. I couldn't hear the words, but I could feel the vibrations. Deaf people really appreciate and love loud music. The interpreter, Joyce Da Miller, said, I'm horrible with names, y'all. Some deaf students have dim hearing ability and can hear when the music pounds into their eardrums. They can't feel the notes, but they can feel the rhythm. Joan Lee, the wife of the president of Gallaudet College, and several students presented gifts to the 26-year-old performer. He was 26, y'all. Then Prince and the Revolution took to the stage for an encore rendition of the moody Purple Rain. In all, he played more than a dozen songs and melodies, including 1999, Little Red Corvette, and When Doves Cry. Noticeably missing were his more erotic songs. Once again, why would he do that? He didn't really go all out like he has before, said Warren Graves, 19, a Prince fan and a student at Springarm High School, who said he recently overcame emotional problems that interfere with his ability to learn. He really respected these young kids. During several songs, Prince emphasized phrases as if trying to motivate the handicapped youth, often discriminated against, ostracized, and left out of normal activities. So that was great. I mean, he didn't have to do that, but he decided that, hey, you know what? this is an underserved population and they like my music, so why can't they listen to it? So, I mean, Prince would do things like that constantly. And even through the controversy of, We Are the World, which I haven't really, I am going to kind of touch on that a little bit when I talk about Around the World in a Day, because that's around the time that all happened. But just to address that, a lot of people think that, Prince was kind of an asshole for not wanting to participate. But honestly, the reason why he didn't participate in We Are the World is because it just wasn't, he didn't want to be there with all those people. I mean, he didn't have a problem with wanting to contribute and help with the African aid. He didn't have an issue with that. It's just that he would do his vocals alone, okay, by himself. When I say by himself, not even the engineers were allowed in when he did his vocals. So he was very private with that. He didn't like to be around a bunch of people when he was recording. And so, and even Lionel Richie, he talked about this on Jimmy Kimmel, the fact that, he volunteered to do a guitar solo. He said, well, can I have a separate booth? So he tried to, see if they wouldn't mind accommodating him. So finally, what he ended up doing was just contributing a song to the We Are the World first, whatever the album was called. I don't know if it was called We Are the World. I think it was. I should know this. I'll look into it later. But it was called For the Tears in Your Eyes. And if I'm being honest, I really didn't care for the song itself, We Are the World. I kind of thought it was a little corny, but like I said, that's me. And For the Tears in Your Eyes was beautiful, though. And he also kind of gave a rebuttal to what happened the night that they recorded We Are the World. One of his bodyguards had got arrested because this guy tried to jump in Prince's limo when Prince and Jill Jones had went out to this club. And they were leaving the club, and this photographer guy just jumped in the limousine and was trying to take pictures. So one of Prince's bodyguards kind of yanked him out of there and broke his camera, and he ended up getting arrested. And so Prince addressed all this in the B-side song called Hello, where he talks about, okay, yes, there are, hungry children right here in America that need our help, which I also agree with. And he would do food drives and things like that around this time when he was doing the Purple Rain tour. He would do things like this, like during the Pearls, Diamonds and Pearls tour. He would also perform for the Special Olympics when they were in Minneapolis that year. So, he would make sure that he would go out of his way to donate to the charities that he cared about and the causes that he cared about. Now, of course, a lot of people know about some of his later efforts, such as Baltimore. He went to Baltimore after the whole Freddie Gray situation, and he did a peace rally there, and he constantly talked about, the importance of giving back to the community, and particularly the Black community. And he said a speech in that he was saying, hey, when I come back to Baltimore, I want to patronize Black businesses. And I know sometimes that type of talk can kind of, make some of Prince's, Caucasian fans maybe uncomfortable. But the fact was, like I said before in previous episodes, Prince was a Black man, and he was a proud Black man, and he wanted to serve his community. Unlike, what a lot of people, say, these things about him, like he didn't care about Black people, or, he was this, he was that, he was a colorist, none of that is true. Prince very much cared about Black people, but not just Black people. He cared about all people, And what spurred on his activism during this late period, hold on, y'all. Okay, had to take a drink. Was the whole Trayvon Martin situation. He actually made a comment, and I'm going to try to see if I can find it real quick, where he said, and I know I posted it on the Facebook page, where he was having this situation, he was having this conversation with his friend Van Jones, who, if y'all don't know who Van Jones is, he's kind of like this activist, and I think he's a contributor to CNN. He's on there a whole lot, kind of as this news pundit. So anyway, him and Van Jones had become fast friends. And they did a lot of charity work together. And after Prince's passing, Van Jones was really the one who really kind of, outed Prince as far as like all of this charity work that he did that nobody really knew about. But anyway, he was having this conversation with Van Jones about the whole Trayvon Martin issue and the fact that people perceive, well, not people, but we're just going to say certain people perceive Trayvon Martin to be a thug because he had on a hoodie. And so Van Jones was like, well, because they're racist, because of racism. And so Prince was like, well, how is it that people can see Trayvon Martin and see a thug, but when they see somebody like Mark Zuckerberg in a hoodie, they see a millionaire? So why can't we get more black Zuckerbergs? That's what we need. So, I mean, and Van Jones was just like, wow, that makes sense. So Prince was one of those guys where he was just like, look, we need to get our own. We need to try to better ourselves. That way we can get the respect that we deserve, and not just for black people, but for, people, period. Carry yourself in such a way that people will have to respect you. So moving on. So other things that Prince did, he donated $250,000 to the Uptown Dance Academy in New York. He also donated $12,000 to the Louisville Free Public Library. Now, this was a library that was one of the first black libraries in the country that black people could come to in Louisville. Now, of course, back in the day, things under Jim Crow was segregated, and that included libraries. So this particular public library was a library that black people could come to, and it was the building was getting under disrepair, and they were getting ready to close it down and probably demolish it. So Prince made it a point to try to donate $12,000 to try to save the building, and they were able to save it. So like I said, he was always looking out for his people. Let it be known, he was always looking out for his people. During the Welcome to America tour, the proceeds from that particular tour went toward the Harlem Children's Zone. So he donated $1 million. It was a nonprofit organization for children and families living in poverty. He also, I think, gave some money to some of the people that were in that documentary called Waiting for Superman. Because if y'all, and I might post this to the Facebook page, but when he did a news conference for the Welcome to America tour, right before he started it, he talked about that documentary and how much it affected him. And he was just like, y'all should watch that. Y'all should really watch that. And so come to find out, he actually gave money to some of the people that were in that documentary that, really needed help. And I thought that was just great. And Kim Berry also had a story where Prince was giving money to these families who lost their house after this flood that happened, in the Minneapolis area at one point. She talked about how he was just passing out checks to families after they lost everything in a flood. And I don't know when that was, but I want to say maybe the late 90s or so. But yeah, so Prince did just all type of things. And like I said, he didn't want anybody to know about it. So it was kind of hard trying to find a lot of this stuff. The stuff that I found was mostly stuff that we probably already know about. We know about him helping out Lauryn Hill when she was incarcerated. He actually made sure that her children were taken care of. He sent money to her family to make sure that, Lauren's children were taken care of, because he cared about that. He cared about people. If somebody needed him, for something, and he cared about them enough, he would pay medical bills. He paid the medical bills of some of James Brown's people, a particular, I can't remember his name, but I think he was either his drummer or one of his guitarists. But this guy was in the hospital dying, and I think he did eventually pass away, but Prince was paying his doctor. He was paying his medical bills. He also paid the medical bills of George Clinton and actually got him out of debt. Like he I don't think it was medical bills that George Clinton owed, but he owed, I think, his last record company or something a whole bunch of money, and he actually paid George Clinton's bills off for him. I mean, so he would do things like that for people that, not even just people that he cared about, but, sometimes even for strangers. There are so many stories that his assistant, this girl named Ruth, I can't pronounce her last name because, like I said, I butcher names, y'all. But her first name is Ruth. And she talked about how Prince would be like watching the news or watching TV, and he would call Ruth up and be like, hey, so there's this lady in Chicago who's trying to get a building for like a home, like trying to build like a homeless shelter. I think she said, yeah. And she's trying to get money for a building for a homeless shelter. So can we find out, where she is and if we can get the money to her? So he would do things like that, just, and wouldn't want no recognition, wouldn't want no big, press conference about it or a big check saying, hey, I donated. He didn't need all that fanfare. And it really wasn't just because he was Jehovah's Witness. It's just because Prince wanted to give from his heart, and he didn't needed anybody to know. And I think, to me, that's the most genuine. When you can give from your heart and not put it on blast like, oh, look at me, I'm such a great person, that really means that you really mean it. And you can disagree with me if you want about that, but that's just my feelings on it. Of course, Prince, we also know that he was a huge advocate for the rights of artists. That was the whole reason why he had that dispute with Warner Brothers, was because he felt like, he wasn't getting his fair share from his creation. And so from that point on, he would approach it, the same way with everybody. Like, there's stories about him talking to like people like Nas and Mariah Carey and even Anita Baker, that have made comments saying Prince would, always encouraging them to own their masters, so they could get their money for their creation. And actually, Nas said he wanted to do a song with Prince and went out of his way to try to find him and all this. And when they finally got together, Prince was like, look, I want you to have that money from the record that we do. And because you don't own your masters, who is it going to go to? He told Nas, he was like, I don't want the people that, are using our intelligence, our God-given gifts to pay for their children's college or pay for them to go to the beach. Talking about these music executives. Like, he was just like, he was against that. Another thing that Prince, of course, really supported was women in music. And I've talked about this before in previous episodes, where he really, really encouraged women musicianship. He had female guitarists, female drummers, female bass players. Just female, of course, dancers and singers, of course. But just about, if you can name a spot in a band, there's probably been at least one female in a Prince band that has played that part. So he really cared about women and supporting them in their musicianship. Another thing that Prince cared about, of course, we already talked about Black Lives Matter. He was a big advocate for that. But he was also a big advocate for animal rights, as, of course, later on, he would become not a vegan. People said he was a vegan, but I think he was more or less a vegetarian. But like in the late 90s, I think even before then, I'm not sure exactly when he became a vegetarian, because I've heard reports that he became a vegetarian as early as 1986. But he had quit, eating meat, sometime around then. And, he did that album, the acoustic guitar album called The Truth, where he has a song called Animal Kingdom. So if you never heard the Truth album, please check it out. It's a great album. But on the Animal Kingdom, he talks about the need of wanting to preserve life and how these animals are God's creatures as well, and how we shouldn't eat them. Now, I'm sorry, Prince, I'm very much a meat eater. I disagree, but I can respect the fact that, that was something that was dear to him. And that was something also very important to Maite as well. She was also a vegetarian, and she didn't really eat meat either. And So that was something that they both kind of bonded over. And also the wool, sheep's wool or any kind of wool that was animal fur. Well, I'm saying wool, fur. They were against that as well. And so he was a big supporter of PETA and, the other animal rights groups and things like that. So now, if you think about it, though, Prince has really been an advocate for people ever since he was, 12 years old. Because you remember back in April when they put out that footage of him talking about that teacher strike. What struck me about his response was that he said that these teachers deserve more pay, but they also need to go back and get more education because they do work long hours and they do try to be there for the students. So even at a very young age, Prince was an activist and cared about people, outside of, his little group, of people in his camp. So let's see, moving on. What else? I'm going through my notes, y'all, just looking through, making sure that I talked about everything that I wanted to talk about. Of course, we know about Yes, We Can Code. Van Jones talked about that. That was an organization that helped underprivileged kids learn how to code so they could one day, get these high-paying jobs in Silicon Valley. So it was called Yes, We Can Code. And that led to, Van Jones said that there were people right now living in Silicon Valley that have those, what do you call them? The little shields over the house, solar panels. Yeah, so Prince also paid for I don't know how many solar panels, but there are people right now that have solar panels on their house that Prince paid for out in California. That's what Van Jones said. So I thought that was wonderful. Oh, okay. So here, Yes, We Can Code. I wanted to get exactly what it was. So it was an initiative that helps urban youth achieve a promising future by connecting tech and social justice leaders to spearhead revolutionary tech programs. So yeah, trying to get students that are, wanting to get into the computer science and things like that. That's always going to be needed. So he spearheaded that as well. Okay, so what else? I mean, that's just like I said, that's just the surface of it. I mean, we really don't. I mean, we'll probably never know all of the things that he did, but that's a lot, I mean, he really was a dedicated philanthropist. I mean, for all of his adult life, he really cared about people. He honestly did. Let's see. Okay, he also had, according to the late musician's pal Van Jones, once again, Prince helped fund an organization called Green for All. The charity aims to bring unions and environmentalists together to push for anti-poverty measures and a clean energy economy, and has installed, so Green for All, this was the solar panels on the roof of buildings in Oakland. So yeah, and he said there are people who have solar panels right now on their houses in Oakland, California that don't know Prince paid for them. So Prince also helped launch another organization, Yes, We Code. Yeah, we already talked about that, which is a nonprofit that encourages urban youth and careers in the tech sector. Let's see. And Yes, We Can Code was actually, that was the, that's what kind of spurred on by the Trayvon Martin situation. Because he was just like, well, we need more, black Mark Zuckerbergs. And I agree. I completely agree. So that's pretty much all I was able to find. But like I said, there was just so many stories and so many mentions of Prince and his philanthropy. But those were some of the bigger ones. And I just hate that he's not here anymore to be able to do more charitable things. Because I often think about, after the whole George Floyd situation in particular in his own hometown, what kind of charitable rallies and things like that he would have did for his own hometown. So I just hate that, but he wasn't here for that, and maybe that was a good thing because of, that was such a big controversy, just like it was in Baltimore. But anyway, so that's all I got as far as Prince's philanthropy. But like I said, he was such a big philanthropist, and we will never know the extent of all the money that he gave to so many anonymous people. I mean, he would donate to he would go to what is that? I can't remember his name. But all these different like functions, like the AIDS groups and the things like that. Like, he donated to so many causes. And really, like I said, it was just too much for me to just even name. I mean, but I put a lot of it on the Facebook page, so please go check it out. But he would donate to so many organizations. And I still believe that the Prince estate is still doing that. So I hope they are. But anyway, guys, so like I said, I have had quite a week, if you can't tell. So I thank you guys for still listening to my podcast and appreciating me and everything that I've been trying to do. Next up, I will be talking about around the world in a day. So we're going to be reviewing that album and talking about some situations that occurred and why people were kind of disappointed with Around the World in a Day. And I guess if I was around back then, which I was 2 years old, but if I was a Prince fan back then, I don't know if I would necessarily be disappointed, but a lot of people were, because I think they wanted a Purple Rain too, but we're going to talk about it. So that'll be up next week. So until then, guys, thank you guys for listening, and peace and be wild, and may you live to see the dawn. Bye.